Okay, so imagine this. You're in the intellectual heart of the ancient world, ancient Athens. And there, you find a mysterious altar, an altar dedicated to an unknown god. Well, that one altar is about to set the stage for a massive clash of ideas. This is the story of how a single speech challenged centuries of philosophy and faith. And believe it or not, it all started with just a few simple words.
And here it is, to an unknown God. It all kicks off with this very inscription, spotted by a traveler, the Apostle Paul. You know, this simple phrase, it's about to become the centerpiece of this incredible encounter. It really makes you wonder, right? Who was this unknown God? And how on earth did this one little altar become the catalyst for a message that would, quite literally, echo through history?
All right, so to really get what happens next, we've got to set the scene. I mean, really picture it. We're talking about ancient Athens. Yeah, it was the absolute center of philosophy for sure, but it was also a city just overflowing with temples and idols and altars to who knows how many gods. So you've got Athens, this epicenter for new ideas, right? But as Paul is walking through its streets, he's provoked. He sees a city that is so incredibly devoted to its gods. I mean, there are idols and temples literally at every turn. And all of that devotion, that deep, deep religiosity, it really stirred something up inside him. Now, at the very heart of this intellectual world was a place called the Areopagus, also known as Mars Hill. But here's the thing. It wasn't just a physical place. It was the name of this super influential council that was in charge of all things religious and educational. Think of them as the gatekeepers for any new ideas in Athens. And, well, a very new idea was about to show up right on their doorstep. So the story really starts to pick up steam in the bustling marketplace. Paul isn't just a tourist here, just observing. Nope. He starts discussing his ideas, and it really doesn't take long before what he's saying starts to catch the ear of the city's sharpest minds. And what's so fascinating about these Athenian philosophers is their whole mindset. I mean, these guys were not passive listeners, not at all. They were actively hunting for the next big idea. They just thrived on anything new. So when Paul's message comes along and it is so different from anything they've ever heard before, you can bet they were immediately intrigued. So who are we talking about here? Who were these philosophers? Well, they were mostly from two major schools of thought. You had the Epicureans, who were all about happiness being the ultimate goal of life, and then you had the Stoics, who prized rationality above everything else. Now, they had different approaches, for sure, but they both believed in a whole pantheon of gods. And Paul's message? It was about to challenge that worldview head on. It wasn't just the idea of one single creator, God, that was new to them. The real kicker, the turning point, was when Paul started talking about Jesus and the resurrection from the dead. See, for the Greek mind at the time, the body was often seen as kind of a prison for the soul. So the idea of a physical resurrection, that wasn't just foreign, it was totally illogical, maybe even undesirable. It was so strange that they just had to know more. So they gave him a formal invitation to come explain himself before the Areopagus. And this, right here, brings us to the main event. I mean, just picture it. Paul, who's basically a nobody in this city, is now standing before this incredibly powerful council on Mars Hill. He's about to deliver what could be the speech of his life. Okay, and right away, you can see Paul's brilliance as a communicator. This is so clever. Instead of just attacking their beliefs, what does he do? He finds common ground. He starts by saying, "Men of Athens, I see that in every way you are very religious." He actually begins with a compliment. He uses their city's own devotion as his starting point. Genius! So once he's established that common ground, he makes this incredible pivot. He brings up that one unique altar he found. The one dedicated to an unknown God. It's just masterful. He uses their own admission of uncertainty as the perfect bridge to introduce exactly what he wants to talk about. And his whole argument just unfolds in this perfect logical progression. Let's break it down. First, he identifies their own altar. Then, he defines this unknown God not as just another god in the lineup, but as the creator of, well, everything. Next, he explains that this God is the source of all life, and that we humans were actually made to seek him out. And then he gets to the climax, the big announcement about Jesus and the resurrection. And get this, to make his point even more relatable, he quotes their own Greek poets. I mean, can you believe it? He uses a phrase they would have totally recognized. In him we live and move and have our being. And with that, he argues that this God he's talking about isn't some distant foreign being. No, he's intimately close to every single one of them.
So, the big question is, how did this masterfully crafted speech actually land with the great thinkers of Athens? Well, the reaction was immediate, and it was deeply, deeply divided. And it all came down to that one strange idea, the resurrection.
Yeah, the response basically fractured into three different camps. You had one group who thought the whole idea of a resurrection was just absurd. I mean, they openly sneered and mocked him. Then you had another group who were intrigued. They weren't quite ready to buy in, but they were like, okay, we want to hear more about this later. And then there was a third, much smaller group. A few people actually believed him, and this is a really big deal. Why? Because one of the new believers was a man named Dionysius, a member of the Areopagus Council itself. So think about that. Despite all the mockery, the message actually broke through and reached one of the city's most important leaders, plus several other Athenians. Okay, so let's wrap this up. What's the ultimate takeaway from this whole encounter on Mars Hill? Well, when you look at the source material, the story is really all about a pivot from the unknown to the known. See, this story isn't just about a clever speech. The big idea, the overarching theme, is that the unknown god the Athenians built that altar for doesn't actually want to remain a mystery. They might have built it out of uncertainty, but Paul's message was that this very same God was actively reaching out, wanting to be known. And that desire to be known, according to the source, finds its ultimate fulfillment right here. The claim is that God is no longer just some abstract concept or an unknown force. No, he's been revealed directly. From this perspective, the unknown has finally truly become known. And all of this leaves us with one final thought to chew on. The Athenians were seekers, right? They were building altars to what they didn't yet understand. Then Paul shows up, claiming he has the answer. It kind of makes you wonder, doesn't it? In our world today, which is still so full of questions, what does it really mean for us to seek the unknown?